Hello and welcome. If you're prepping for your LPIC-1 exam, you know that keeping a Linux system healthy and happy is, well, it's pretty much the whole job. And right at the core of that system is the file system. So today, we're going to break down the essential skills you need to maintain its integrity. All right, let's dive in.
And let's be real about why this matters. The LPI learning materials nail it with this quote. Mastering these commands isn't just about ticking a box on an exam. It's about being that pro who can solve a problem fast and avoid those dreaded, soul-crushing all-nighters in the server room.
So to make all this stick, let's use a simple analogy. Think of your file system as a patient. We're going to learn how to check its vitals, diagnose some of those tricky hidden problems, and, when we have to, apply a little first aid. This is your guide to the file system health check. Okay, first up in any health check, the vitals. And for a file system, the most common vital sign you're going to watch is disk space. Running out of space is probably one of the most frequent fires you'll have to put out. So let's look at the two main tools for the job. Now, this brings us to something that trips a lot of people up, the difference between DF and DU. Think of it like this. DF, or disk-free, is your big picture checkup. It tells you about the overall health of the entire drive. But DU, or disk usage, is like grabbing a magnifying glass. It's the diagnostic tool that helps you zoom in and find out exactly which folder is eating up all your space.
Let's look at a real example. When you run df-h, you get this nice, clean, human-readable output. The column you'll look at first is use %. Right away, you can see our main partition is at 25% capacity, but that external drive is getting pretty full at 75%. It's the perfect first stop for a quick, system-wide overview. But what if that main partition was at, say, 95%? DF told you there's a problem, but it didn't tell you where the problem is. That's your cue to call in do. For example, running do-s/var/log gives you a quick summarized total for the log directory, which, by the way, is a very common place for files to get out of control. It's the perfect tool for playing detective.
So, quick question just to make sure that sinks in. If you wanted to see how much space your personal home directory is taking up, which command would you grab? Yep, you got it. It would be du. Something like dush right from your home folder would do the trick perfectly. All right, so you've checked your disk space with DF, and it says you've got tons of gigabytes free. Awesome. But then you try to create one tiny new file, and the system yells at you, "No space left on device." What is going on? Well, you've just run into a classic exam question and a real-world head-scratcher caused by something called inodes. So what on earth is an inode? The name is short for index node, and every single file and folder on your system has one. It's basically the metadata. It stores everything about the file, like who owns it, what the permissions are, and most importantly, where the actual data lives on the disk. The card catalog analogy is perfect. The inode is the little card that tells you where to find the book, but it isn't the book itself. Now picture this. You check your disk space, and it looks amazing, only 10% used. You're thinking, great, I have tons of room for big files, right? Well, here's the catch. Your file system only has a limited number of these index cards, or inodes. So if you have, say, millions and millions of tiny empty files, you can actually use up all of your inodes while using barely any of the actual disk space. And once you're out of inodes, that's it. You can't create any new files, no matter how much free space you have. So how do you diagnose this sneaky problem? It's actually super simple. You just use the same df command, but you add the -i flag for inodes. This tells df to report on inode usage instead of data block usage. It'll show you immediately if one of your file systems is about to run out of those critical index nodes. Okay, let's test that idea. Your df-h command says you've got plenty of space, but the system just won't let you save a tiny little text file. What's the very next command you should run? Exactly, df-i to check on your inode usage. So we've covered monitoring and diagnosis, but what happens when something's actually broken? A sudden power outage or a system crash can sometimes mess up the file system structure. It's time to learn a little first aid. But before we even say the name of the command, we have to talk about the single most important rule. This is a big one. You must never run a file system check on a mounted active file system. Seriously, that's like trying to perform surgery on a patient while they're running a marathon. It's a guaranteed way to cause massive, catastrophic data loss. Just don't do it. The safe way to do it, the only way to do it, is this simple 4-step process.
First, you identify the device you need to check. Second, and this is the crucial part, you unmount it. Third, you run the check using the fsck command, which stands for file system check. And finally, once it's done and everything's good, you can safely mount it again.
Okay, one more time, just because it's that important for the exam and for your career. What is the absolute most important thing you must do before you run fsck? The file system must be unmounted. So DF, DU, and fsck, those are your daily drivers. But every now and then, you need a specialist. Different file systems have their own set of unique utilities, and for the LPIC-1, you definitely need to be aware of them. This little table is perfect for your study notes. For the common ext file systems, we have tune2fs, which lets you tweak different parameters. Now, if you're working with an XFS file system, you can't use fsck. It just won't work. XFS has its own toolkit. The big one to know is XFS repair for fixing things. And for really deep dives, there's XFS-DB. You don't need to be a master of these for the 101 exam, but you do need to know they exist and which file system they go with. So let's wrap it all up. Our complete file system health check is really a 4-step process. You monitor the vitals with DF and DO. You diagnose those tricky hidden problems like running out of inodes with DF-I. You repair any corruption safely with fsck, and always on an unmounted file system. And finally, you know how to fine-tune things with specialized tools when you need to. And that's our tour of file system health. The main takeaway here is that your file system is the foundation for absolutely everything your Linux system does. Being proactive, monitoring it, and knowing the right tools, that's not just stuff for an exam. That's what makes a great sysadmin. So the question I'll leave you with, are you checking your foundation?